Let's go then. So what you're looking at, or this view, is actually Microsoft's tool. So we talked about how you have the different dialects of SQL and how each dialect might be just slightly different, contingent upon the client who owns the product. If they own or whoever owns the product, whatever, they can do something slightly different. So what you're actually learning on is, hold on, y'all, I gotta my throat died. Okay. So what you're actually learning on is Microsoft's tool. What you see over here to this left. Oh, and if it asks you, do you want to save your database? I mean, save your queries or something like that, say no, because you're going to be like writing your own code. So what you see over here to your left is your Object Explorer. This
I'm
is
sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. For mine, it says they want me to connect again. So should I do that? Because at the top it has a whole bunch of different codes.
let me see your screen. Let me see how it looks.
So let's see how I can do this. Hold on.
Okay. Because I think you should be good, but I just want to make sure before I like blindly say yeah, you good.
So if I hate double monitors sometimes. If I have a double monitor, if I share my screen, will it take you to if you share your monitor, it should ask you which screen you want to share.
Oh, at the bottom. Oh yeah, share, and then it says entire screen or either window or Chrome tab. I do entire screen. I had to walk through it to make sure.
Okay, hold on. Thank you. Can you see it?
Yep. Now let me see. I'm gonna put you up on my screen so I can see what you're talking about. Yep, you good. Connect. And then it's gonna ask
Oh,
you
connect.
to, yep, it's gonna ask you, do you want to recover? Say no. Oh, it did.
Should I exit this stuff at the top or no?
You can, because you're gonna start over anyway. So what you just did is you just connected to the database. And
Okay.
when you get in your like once you get in your role, it's gonna look exactly like that. Do you want to connect? What is your environment, etc. Et cetera. It's gonna look exactly like that.
Okay. So this is all good though.
You good? You
Right.
good? Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So here on the left here we have our Object Explorer. This is what Ashley was just connecting to. When you connect to your database, this is your connection. Let me see. Okay, so here is your server. Your server is the brain of your database. If your server is down, it's problems. Sales can't get to their data, marketing can't get to their data. If you work in a healthcare environment, healthcare providers don't have access to their data. It can become a big mess real fast, especially if you work in an environment to where y'all are like people need their data like at all times. This is your server. Now, earlier I gave y'all the example. I said, I was on a collaborative call and we were working collaboratively and we were moving a store procedure from the QA environment to the production environment. They all look exactly like this, but they have different functions. Like if I'm in a production environment, that's literally live data. That's what sales is using, that's what everybody is consuming, everybody's dashboard is connected to it, etc. etc. QA is more or less like a sandbox. You go in there, you can break some, you can mess some up, it's okay. So this is just your environment. This is your server. When you get your role, you will have multiple servers or environments. You will. When you expand this right here, You see all of these different folders here. Click on your databases here and expand it here. And these black boxes are your databases. The core definition of a database is stores your data. When you get your role, you might have 60 databases. As we function and as we navigate throughout this space, I do tell you which database your data is in, but I do not tell you which tables your data is in. And I'm gonna explain to you why, and I'm gonna show you why what I mean by it. So these are your databases. So for this session tonight, let's go into our data analytics simplified database. Expand it here. Now, you see your database diagrams, your tables, your views, programmability, security, all this stuff. Your primary focus when you get your first role will 99.9% of the time be centered only around tables and maybe views and maybe programmability, which is stored procedures. But if you fully understand how tables interact and how data relationships and stuff work, you can understand these as well. But we do create views. We do that in session 4, I think, anyway. So you'll have an understanding of views as well. But tables. So let's expand our tables here. So you see your 3 tables here. For this database, we have 3 tables. Now we've gone from our server, which is the top. We've gone to our databases. We've gone to our tables. So all of it is like an umbrella. Now, these are your tables. Now let's get into data investigation. Data investigation is your bread and butter. I cannot stress that enough. And it's attributed to the fact of when you are hired as an analytic professional, the expectation is for you not to be the expert, but you're supposed to know a little bit something more than people that are not within the space of data. And as you navigate the space, it is an expectation for you to be an expert, but it's not the expectation for you to know all things, if that makes sense. So here we have our tables. Now, data investigation, what does that look like? That literally looks like going to look at your data. Here, let's expand our table right here, and let's go look at our columns. These are all of our columns that are in that particular table. Also, when you look at these codes in parentheses, these codes fall into what I was talking about earlier regarding data definitions. How is your table defined? These are the columns. Okay, cool. But how are those columns defined? So here we have PK. Do anybody know what PK means? Not preacher kid.
No, because I sure was about to ask you what PK meant.
All right. PK. And I'm writing in the chat so y'all can have for y'all notes. PK, primary key. That is the unique identifier for that table. A table cannot have 2 of the same PKs, period. This is how I uniquely identify that record in that table. PK. Then I turn around, I'm like, oh, okay, it's a PK and it's an integer. And it's not null. That means that is a required field. Then I come down here, I'm like, oh, okay, so I got my course name. That's a varchar 100 department. Varchar, all of these are how your how that table is defined. So this is my table, and this is how that table is defined. So then we come down here to my enrollments table, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna do my data investigation here in my enrollments table. I see that my enrollment ID is my primary key. That's a unique identifier for that table. But also, this table has a course ID, which is the FK. FK is 4 key. FK is the unique identifier for another table. Think about in our natural language when we say something is foreign. If something is foreign, then it is not from there, whether it is a foreign car, whatever the case is. It's not from wherever you are. The same concept applies within data. If I identify my FK as a foreign key, I'm essentially telling you that that is a PK or primary key to another table. In that, it also establishes what you would call a data relationship. Just like how humans are related, I have two humans. They are, how are they related? They have something in common. Data is the same way. If I have two tables, what is the data relationship or the data dependency? Because those can be used interchangeably between those two tables. In order to establish that, I need to do, first of all, do my data investigation and see which tables and which columns, and then look and see how those columns are defined. That will explain the data relationships. So when I'm looking at this enrollments table, how is what table is this enrollments table related to, and how?
I have a question about PK and SK.
Okay.
Are both of those numeric data types, or like do they have to be numbers?
You know what? I think that I've always seen them as numbers, but let me check that. Um, nope. It said primary keys. I'm gonna share my screen. That's a good question. I've always seen it like that though.
Because
Okay.
they're basically IDs, right?
Exactly. It said that, okay, you can see it. It said that nope, they are not always integers, although it's common practice. While integers are often preferred for the efficiency in indexing and performance, other data types like strings, such as UUIDs or usernames, UIDs is what they call, or usernames, or even composite keys, which is a combination of columns, can be used for primary and foreign keys. So they said that it is common practice because I've only seen integers as primary keys. Literally, I can't think of one time that I have not. So that would make sense. It said it's common practice, but it doesn't have to be. But that's a good
Okay,
question,
maybe
though.
it's because it's easy to
Yep,
use as an identifier.
it is. Because when you think about it, I can easily give you an ID. I can easily give this record an ID, and that's easier to identify than a like Varcar or something. Yep. That's a good question. So they said it is common practice, but it's not required. I would even, they said common practice. I would even consider that best practice though, because I've never seen a PK or a foreign key that's not an integer. I don't think I ever have. Now that I'm thinking back, I haven't. But apparently, you can get away with it. So.
Yeah, because now that I think about it, I think it's easy for, like, if you were to add anything else to it, it would be
Mm-hmm.
easy to duplicate that information.
Right. I agree. I agree. That was a good question. But I've never seen it like that. And I didn't think about it until you just asked it. But no. Not required, but definitely I would say best practice. They say common practice. But yeah, either way, good question. Any other questions? Okay. So with this enrollment table, what's the data relationship with this enrollment table? What is the common field? What is the data relationship between those two tables?
Course ID.
Yep, that is correct. It's the course ID. Let's take it a step further and now let's look at our students table. In our students table, we have okay, so we have the student ID, first name, last name, enrollment year, major. We also have student ID that has been defined as the primary key. What is the data relationship between the students table and any other table?
Mm, okay, so the students table um, have an enrollment year, I think I
Mm-hmm.
would say. Um, because even though the enrollment hat says enrollment date, it includes the year.
You wrong.
While the students table
You
is
wrong.
really
Yes, girl. And I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you why. In your brain, that makes perfect sense. And it makes perfect sense. I know exactly where you're going. You like, okay, well, if I have the date, then that date has to include the year. So that's the data relationship. That's the dependency between those two fields. Uh-oh. I think I lost you.
okay.
That's where you were going. Logically, yeah.
Right.
Logically, yes. Logically, you're spot on. But in data, you are wrong because we can't really make like for okay, so okay, you actually are uncovering you actually are uncovering like another part of data investigation. And I'm explaining you why. Now you said okay, enrollment date. So you talking about the enrollment date in this field. Another way to do your data investigation, y'all actually do this with me. Right click your table and select your top 1,000 rows. And you see that this actually includes the year too already. So we good on that end. But you wouldn't have known that just based on the enrollment date. What you said logically makes perfect sense, Lashana.
You want us to click it?
Which day? Right click
Did
it
you say you want us
actually.
to click the students for the enrollment year? Right click that.
Right click the enrollments table. Right click the enrollments table and click select top 1,000 rows and do your date. This is another way to do data investigation as well because this way it allows me to see my actual values is in my table. So right click your enrollment table and then select your top 1,000 rows. And this is another way to do your data investigation.
Okay. Other than that, I would say the student ID is what's in common between the students table and enrollments.
You're right. And your question regard you're like 95% confident, but that 5% window or question excuse me, that 5% window comes in the question that the student ID is not defined as a foreign key within your enrollment table.
Okay, are you using a Mac or are you using Windows?
Windows.
Okay, because I was trying to get it to I mean, I can open the table, but I was trying to right click for the drop down. It's not working.
Yeah, right click and then select top 1,000 rows. Like that.
I'll switch over to my Windows. I don't know why it's not. It's just opening the.
Can you share your screen?
No, let's see. Okay.
Oh, and another thing, by Letitia, why you doing that? Another common question that you might be asked as you start interviewing is, what's the primary key and what's a foreign key? That's what we just went over. Those are common questions in addition to the joins, which we'll talk about in section 3, I think. But those are common questions that people tend to ask on technical assessments because they uncover multiple things. The first thing that it uncovers is that you understand data past like just retrieving data. Like it gives the visibility that, okay, I have a full understanding of like data relationships in their entirety because their primary key helps keep the data organized. That's when you get into like data architecture and stuff. So that's a very common question. So make sure you have like you understand what's a PK, what's a foreign key, and make sure you can explain the differences in those two. Because a lot of times, take assessments, you might have to write code, or it might just be somebody just shooting out a few questions and kind of gauging your understanding of different concepts. Or you might have to like take home some data, quote unquote, or whatever the case is. But that's a super common question because it helps your interviewer understand that this person understands data like on a deeper level. Like if you know how data is related and stuff. Letitia, were you able to get it?
Um, no, but it's I had to log out to share because I had to go in and adjust my settings on um Chrome. I guess I
Okay.
could and come right back in, but I'll figure it out.
Okay, just hit me up if you need me. Use the chat, or you could just say it.
Okay.
Okay. So this one, we right click and select our top 1,000 rows. Now, this gives us another opportunity to do our data investigation. When you get your first role, data investigation is going to be your friend. Your first 30 days, 60 days would be centered around, okay, you got your HR stuff. If you go to a different company, I got but yeah, if you go to a different company, your first 30 day, okay, HR stuff, etc., etc. The rest of the time is going to be like getting you permissions to your databases, getting you familiar with the type of data that you have. So your first maybe 30, 45 days is going to be like you doing data investigation and stuff. And that's also a really good question to ask when you're interviewing as well. What does my first 30 to 45 days look like? What are the expectations? Because you coming into a new organization, you're going to have some ramp up time with that data. But that's also why I tell y'all as well that if your existing experience is already in a certain space, stay over there. Stay wherever you are, but lean into data wherever you are because that gives you an understanding of what that business concept is. So if you're in marketing, if you're in HR, if you're in real estate, stay over there, but lean into data within that space because it allows you to come in already with a baseline understanding of what that data is supposed to look like and what data is valuable for your analysis. So your first 30 some days gonna be like, okay, data investigation. You're gonna do a lot of looking around, getting access to stuff, etc., etc. And with this, okay, I had the ability to have visibility to this data. I selected my top 1,000 rows, and this is my output. You see, this is the output. So I can go and I can look at this data and see exactly how it's structured and see exactly what it looks like, what the values look like. Any questions on here before I take it like some steps further? Okay. Now, select anything that you have within SQL that changes colors, whether it is red, whether I mean not red, I'm tripping. Whether it is pink, green, blue, um, black, anything in SQL that changes colors is a reserved word. So here we have our select statement because we are selecting. We are selecting data from your table. Here we have top 1,000. Top 1,000 is called a limit because it allows me to limit how much data is returned in my output. You see, I ain't got nothing but 1,000 records over here. When I select my top 1,000, it automatically does it because when you get within your real space, your table might have 2 million records, 3 million records, 5 million records. You might be dealing with a lot of data, especially if you are in healthcare, especially if you are like in finance. People have a lot of data. So that top 1,000 is called a limit. So here we have our top 1,000. Here, these are our columns. Anything we want in our select statement, in our output, my bad. Anything we want in our output, this is called an output, we have to explicitly label in our select statement, period. The way that I look at that is when you go to the grocery store and you have your basket is your output. I have my basket. I want this. I'm selecting this. I'm selecting this. I'm selecting this from anything you do. You're selecting from a table. I'm selecting this produce. I'm selecting this milk. I'm selecting this from my table, from my shelf, from wherever. And that's what I want in my output. That's what I want in my basket. Now, when you look at this from, since we selected the top 1,000 rows directly from here, it's breaking everything down to tell you explicitly what you're pulling. If you hover your mouse over, you'll see, okay, well, that's the database. And then you come right over here and you see DBO. This is called a schema. This is how your data is organized in your database. Let's say you have a project. Let's say you on a cloud migration project and your database has 60 tables in that database, but 5 of those tables are for a cloud migration project. So I can change my schema to cloud migration or, whatever, just to keep all my data grouped together and organized within that database. This is your actual table. So we are selecting our columns from our table. Now, let's get rid of this top 1,000 because that top 1,000 is called a limit. Get rid of that top 1,000 and re-execute your code. Now you will have 20,000 records. Now, let's say I do not want student ID. So I want to comment out a line of code that I do not need. In order for me to do that, I'll do my 2 dashes and it doesn't even exist. 2 dashes and re-execute. You notice that all of your commas are in front. Keep your commas in the front. That's best practice because just like how I just commented out that line of code and I didn't have to change anything, those commas in the front keep your code clean, keep your code neat, and it makes it easier for you to remove commas that you don't need. Don't try to come in here and reinvent and write the whole syntax from scratch. Use what you have and build upon it like a lasagna or something. Use what you have and literally build on that. So the two dashes is one way to comment out. Another way to comment out a block of code, I'm gonna show you like this, is backslash star at the top and then star backslash at the bottom. And that's if you want to comment out like a full block of code like this. Python does something similar. They all have the ability to comment out data or comment out code that you don't use. Any questions about that? Okay.
Be looking at it, looking into it further when you mean um, codes that we won't be using.
Yep.
Okay.
Anytime you, let's say I don't want grade anymore. I don't want grade in my output. So I'm gonna just comment it out and it's like, oh, it doesn't even exist. Instead of me going and like deleting this, like don't do that. Don't delete. Don't delete it. Just comment it out. Because it makes it easier for you in the event to have to go back and like reference it or use it or any of those things. It just opens up room margin for error if like I'm constantly deleting and adding columns. You know, you might misspell something or whatever the case is. Next, documentation. What are you doing? What is the purpose of that analysis? In order for you to document your code, just go right at the top and do your two dashes. And just it doesn't even have to be fancy, but just explain what you're doing because part of the database is collaboration. If I share my code with somebody, or or if I come back in 3 months and I got to do the same type of analysis, or my Uber Eats come and I get up, everything be about food, me, but oh well. I get up and I got to go answer the door, whatever. I might honestly forget what I was doing. Or another example of that is a business definition. Let's say you're in a business definition where a certain customers or whatever has to meet a certain criteria to be considered active or to be considered this or to be considered that. You doing your documentation allows for you to document what exactly you're doing and what that criteria is. So that next time you have to do that analysis, you're not doing any guesswork with like, okay, well, what did active mean again? What did the date time mean? What did any of those things mean again? It just helps you work better. So always document your code right at the top. And it doesn't have to be fancy, but you need to be able to tell what you said and did. Any questions? Okay. Now, y'all can keep y'all SSMS up. I am about to go into this. Now we're going to get into our basic SQL syntax. So the primary objectives for tonight is introduction to SQL, introduction to databases, and applying what is referred to as DML languages. I'm gonna write that in the chat because I know I'm country. DML languages.
Once we're done with this, we'll have access to this video again, correct? And the PowerPoint or just the video.
Both of them.
Okay.
I don't know what that is. Oh, what was that? I think that. Oh yeah, it's Lashana. Okay. Yeah. So you have access to the recording. If you want to hop into the VM on your own time and apply some stuff, you can more than welcome to do it. And the slides as well. They're in the dashboard, but yeah, you do. Yeah. Okay. So the objectives: SQL, databases, DML language. What what is DML language encompass? That is data manipulation language. That is the core language of SQL. This is how SQL interacts. We talked about select, and you'll actually go and retrieve some data for me as well. But we talked about select. Select star is not best practice. Always do like what I taught you. Always list out what columns you need. If you don't need the column, get rid of it. Comment it out. So select your column names from your table. Anything you doing in SQL is going to be to a table. That's all. That's it. That's all. You can't do nothing in here unless you're doing it to a table. Now, I'm going to skip down to this delete. And the reason being is because I want to talk to you all about this where. So in this delete actually removes data from the database. Here we are deleting from. We're going right back to that table. But this is where it's important for you all because I'm giving it a condition. I'm saying delete from table name where this column equals this, where this condition is met. Where is called a condition. That allows you to filter down your data to be explicit with who or what you need. When you get your first row, you're not just gonna select data from a table. You ain't gonna never do that unless you're doing like data investigation. But you're going to be answering questions like, okay, so how many did this? How many customers are from here? How many like that? Those are the type of business questions you're gonna ask. And that requires you to filter your data because all your data in your table is not necessary for your analysis. In order to do that, you got to filter where this column equals this value. Notice that also you put single quotes around the values. Anytime you have a varchar I'm writing in the chat. Anytime you have varchar data type, you have to make it a string. It's a string of data. You make it a string by putting single quotes around the values. Your values have to explicitly match what's in that table. If they don't explicitly match, it's not going to return any data back because it's like it doesn't exist. So this where is called a condition, where this column equals this. You also use a where in your select statement. Select columns from table where this condition is met, where this column is this. That is filtering your data. Any questions about that? Okay. Now we are going to get into our use case. I'm gonna keep this up, and I'm gonna write the use case in the chat. Okay, so the business question is, I need a list of students who major in biology. So first things first, data investigation. Which tables answer this question? Go do your data investigation. Which tables answer this question? Then when I find which tables answer this question, which columns do I need to filter down to explicitly answer that business question? I need a list of students who majored in biology. So first things first, data investigation. which tables, which columns. Right click your table and document what you're doing at the top, similar to what I did here. Right click your table, select your top
So when you
1,000
say
rows.
that,
Hmm.
no, I said so when you're saying that, you're saying to go like to students and then look at the major.
Girl, yes.
Oh, sorry.
That's exactly it, though. That's the table and that's the column. But come through data investigation. Yep.
Now, do we, so silly question, do we actually click on the major or do we just do what we did last time, which we right click it and do select the row of 1,000?
Yep. Right click, select the top 1,000 rows, and build your syntax on that. I already got my select set. I already got my where my stuff at? Oh, there you go. I already got my select statement. Build my syntax on the document, what you're doing at the top.